theoretical. This is a result of a practice because this has been tested, validated with people with whom we have been working, namely in Western Africa. And these are the different products of documentation that you can have. You can have fact sheets of good practice. So for example, this is the Land and Water Days, and this is done in the format of a share fair. And we have had many share fairs, so we have documented how to organize a share fair so that it has impact. So that is a good practice. In Western Africa, there is something called inventory credit, warrantage in French. And this rural credit scheme has been tested for many years. So we wanted to know, is it gender sensitive? Is it true that men and women can have access to this type of credit? So we have checked that. And then we've seen, okay, but how can it be replicated elsewhere? So it means that it is the work that you're doing during many years, and then you document it. And then we had exchange visits between countries in Western Africa so that they could learn what to do with it. And therefore, little by little, we have developed all these different type of products, not only fact sheet, methodologies, but also case studies, training manuals, guidelines, a theater play. That's the little theater play that we have done at the share fair in IFAD in Rome to actually explain to people what is inventory credit, for example. And these theater plays, they can be reproduced as soap opera on the radio, for example. But we had also films and posters. So you see, these are the various different ways that you can share things. And this has to be validated, because remember, a good practice is something that has been validated. So with whom can you validate? Of course, you can validate with the stakeholders with whom you're going to work or with whom we have been working. So it's on the content, it's based on several experiences, not only one. One will be a good experience, but not yet a good practice. To have a good practice, you need to repeat it several times. That you have some quality control. So usually it's with people with whom you're working, who are your peers. They could be from your country or another one. And it's also to look at the validation of the form. Is it readable to people who are not experts? Because what you want at the end is that others are interested by what you wrote. So you try to remove the jargon and make things easily understandable. So the use of graphics could also help for that. So how do you share it? So we have addressed already a few of these things. The media, mass media, traditional media like the theater, the puppet show, but also the social media. Now we have Twitter, we have the blogs, we have Facebook, we have many things which are possible. And then the audiovisual, the written support. The films, the pictures, we are taking pictures, we are being filmed, it's web streamed, so people who are not in this room can actually watch her just at the moment. Then new ICTs, new information and communication technologies, the mobile phones. Many people now can actually look for the information, so it's also important to think about, okay, let's make this available also for mobile phones, web-based platforms. And then the communication methods. And this is what we are going to do during these 4 days, is sharing, like the share fair, the exchange visits. So we hope also that by the end of these days, there are a few things that we have been doing that you will be able to replicate, that you also will find good practices, not only on the technical aspects of land and water, but also on how you're going to work on land and water. Here I have put a few references because how you do it, it's documented first on the Land and Water Days website. You will see that when you go on experiences, where you wanted to share your experience in the case studies, you have a column on the right, which is good practice. And this is where you're going to find the concept note and the templates. So I just put that URL there. And then we have developed a website on good practice at FAO. And this is part of the knowledge aspect. That's why in the URL you have knowledge, good practice. You want to know more about the methods, the tools? We have a fantastic collaborative wiki, which is shared by several organizations, international organizations, UN and non-UN, and also a community of practice called Knowledge Management for Development. And so all these people are sharing the way they're working, and they have put all the methods and the tools, and many that we will use today and the next days, which are available on this wiki. And then if you want to know, okay, but we would like to see examples. How have you done that? No problem. Here we gave you a program which is called the Knowledge Management and Gender Program, and you will be able to actually see how it looks like. So how you can actually get inspired by these things. Well, I hope you will be inspired. So this is why we are trying to look at good practices, at what it means. So I hope that I was able to clarify a little bit this concept. And if you have questions, now it would be the right time to continue clarifying the few things that maybe were not as clear as I thought it would. I will give you the microphone, which is there.
Before they go, you just tell them any question they have, just contact us.
Yes.
Or any.
Please. Sorry.
No, we need a copy of those references so we can
yes,
go to the
as I
site.
said, all the PowerPoint's presentation, at least all the one of FAO, because we have the right to do so, we will put them on what is called SlideShare.
Okay.
So you will be able to download them from the SlideShare account, which is the FAO SlideShare account.
Okay.
Now, for people from other organizations who would like to share also their PowerPoints or their presentation, because we are not the owner of it, we just will need then your approval that we can publish it on FAO SlideShare account.
Oh, that's good.
Are there other questions?
When we can start.
Okay, so if this...
Maybe in answer also to the previous request, there is a session this afternoon, a training session on good practices. So it's also an opportunity for you to take better note and to discuss the topic this afternoon.
I forgot to say one thing, is that, it's important to document good practices for all the good reasons that we mentioned that. But there is something else also happening in 2015, and it's the World Expo. And in 2015, the World Expo will take place in Milan. And it has a very particular theme. So I'm going to read it so that I don't make a mistake. It's feeding the planet energy to life. So it's all about food and agriculture. And they are actually having a competition on the best, they call it best practice. For me, the word good, best, it doesn't matter so much. What is important is what you do with it. I find best a little bit arrogant because things which are best don't move, and what is important is that things are good because you can improve them, and we can always improve, and what is important is that we are able to adapt to change, because that is the world, and that is life. You have to be able to adapt to change. Anyway, so that was the parenthesis for good and best. So they do a competition of what is called best practices for this 2015 Expo in Milan, and there are different themes, and some it's about natural resources, sustainable natural resources. So people interested in documenting good practices can actually also think about submitting them for the competition for best practices. This exhibition will last 6 months in Milan. It will gather people from all over the world. And there will be, many of the UN organizations will be present in this expo, and there will be a parcours to actually discover all what is being done. It's a public-private partnership, because it's not only UN, it's not only NGOs, but it's also the private sector. So you're also competing with everybody. So feeding the world, making the world better. So if you're interested, be aware that the template that we are using for documenting our good practice is going to be the template that is going to be used also for the competition for Milan 2015. The deadline for submitting your best practice is April 2014. So this can also, this information I can also provide it to you.
Thank you very much. I'm Balla from Sudan.
It's working.
Do you think, I mean, the good practice is stick to its conditioned environment in certain areas, where good practice in some areas could not be a good practice in other areas, or be a big failure in other areas? How do you look at this? How can we, I mean, take a good practice in certain conditions, stick to certain areas, certain environment, taking it to another area which have a different conditions? Mm-hmm. I don't think good practice in some areas could be good practice in other areas.
You are correct. That's why it's important that you do the cycle, which is over there. Is that when you think that it is good, you have to actually assess whether the conditions to be able to replicate it are there. Because sometimes, you know, when you are documenting your good practice, you're also giving what are the conditions that have to be respected so that it becomes a good practice. So maybe in another environment, the preconditions are not there, so you won't be able to do it. But then what is interesting, it's actually to think, what do we need to do so that we have these conditions available? So, you know, you're building your good practice little by little. And that's why I also mentioned it is an iterative process, because something that worked well maybe a few years ago, it's not going to work anymore because climate has changed, so you need to adapt. That's why you have to think about it all the time. It's a learning process. In this case, if there are no more questions, I will invite you to go to the foyer and to decide whether you want to actually visit the different tables and meet also colleagues with whom you would like to share ideas, or whether you would prefer to go into the thematic coffees in the facial room and to discuss about the very specific areas. And if you have an appointment with Rafaela for the interview, she will be waiting for you under the staircase. There is a very nice sofa. So I will say enjoy the rest of your morning. The lunch will be at La Brasserie, and then at 2:30, please, we come back in the foyer to go to the different training session. So look carefully also. Don't forget to register for these afternoon sessions. I thank you very, very much.